I am Chuffed Captain. You are prisoners aboard the privateer Traitor's Claw, a stolen police vessel.
Stealing must be a habit with you. This ship, 2 stasis boxes.
Kazinti archaeologists found both boxes, but the one we managed to keep was empty. It served us well as bait to draw you here. But the slavers had weapons that could devastate a galaxy. There could be one in that box.
Risk. Risk is our business.
Out there. That way.
What happened?
Starfleet was founded to seek out new life. Well, there it sits.
Sounds like fun.
7,
Rock and roll!
6.
We're not afraid of diversity. We don't persecute it, we embrace it.
At least I won't die alone.
Join our Federation of Planets. And reach for the stars.
Those were the days.
Program complete. Enter when ready.
Welcome back to another Trek review, where each week we talk about Star Trek. And this week we're talking about an episode in Star Trek the Animated Series. Specifically, we're talking about episode 14 of season 1. That episode is entitled The Slaver Weapon. It originally aired December 15th, 1973.
Wow.
It was written by Larry Nevin, which was adapted from his story, The Soft Weapon. And it was directed by Hal Sutherland. The synopsis for The Slaver Weapon is: a group of Kazinti divert to shuttle Copernicus and retrieve a newly discovered slaver weapon. So before we get on to comments and subscribers, let's go over to Caleb and ask what Caleb thought of the episode.
Well, funny you ask. Yeah, it's an interesting episode. It has no Kirk.
No Kirk.
So I thought that was cool. I thought that Spock, her and Sulu together were a pretty cool pick.
Yeah.
And the whole concept is just kind of crazy.
It is.
Are there any episodes like in the original series that have anything to do with any of this stuff? No.
Nope.
Okay. Cool. So this is literally just like Roddenberry's like, oh, finally I can draw this crazy stuff.
Basically what happened was DC Fontana was a big fan of this Larry Nevin who was writing stories, part of his something, I forgot what his universe was called, but he was writing his own like science fiction books, and she was a big fan of him, and so then got him to like write for the show, and this is what he wrote. So he took basically big sections of his book, like the Kazinti and the slavers and stuff like that, and then they fit it into the Star Trek universe.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So it would be like, oh wow, we're huge fans of George Lucas, but like, how do we bring in his Star Wars material into Star Trek? And like, okay, have George Lucas write an episode, but it has to be structured around like Star Trek. And then it's like perfect. And then here's the episode, and it's like, okay.
Interesting. You know what's funny too is that's kind of how it felt.
Yes.
It felt like something that was very much like not Star Trek.
Right.
In a Star Trek episode.
Yeah, it very much feels like it's rich in lore and like backstory, but it has like nothing to do with anything we've ever just like Star Trek has ever brought up.
Yeah. And of course, like if it's weird and crazy, the immediate thing is like, oh, well, these slavers were from 3 trillion years ago.
Yeah. So the interesting thing is they go for like Star Trek goes forth and like creates Cathans, which are like cat-like people.
Right. Yeah, that's what I thought when I first saw him.
Right. And then like later, I don't know if it's actually in Star Trek canon, but they later introduce Pharisians or Fursians or something like that.
For a reason.
And they're like basically like bad Cathans essentially. But the reality is they didn't have the rights to the Kzinti, so they just like made up like another cat human race that were like
Weird.
evil, essentially. So it's because the guy owns it. This Larry Nevin like owns these characters. They're his characters.
So weird.
But so one of the reasons I was showing it to you is because Sulu makes a comment in the episode that's like worth it talking about. And then also in Lower Decks, there's a couple, like you see a couple Kzinti in the episodes.
Oh, okay.
So they do come back, but they're like background characters. See, that's what I'm saying. Like Lower Decks is not like a
like it pulls from a lot of crazy stuff
from like everything, and it doesn't.
Well, that's cool.
So it's one of those things that like Lower Decks is like made for fans who are who have seen like literally everything. Yeah. And now that show is like, we're tying it all together, so.
Yeah. Well, no, I thought it was a fun episode.
Yeah. It's definitely.
There's some parts of it that I enjoyed. Yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely interesting to not have any of the other cast in it, like Bones or Scotty or Kirk are not in it. And then also, I think I read that this is like literally the only episode. This is like the only thing since Kirk has been introduced that he's not in. Like everything else he's in. Like he's in every episode of the original series. He voices every episode of the animated series except for this one, and he's in all the movies. So it's like it's a fascinating thing that they were just like. There was a thing that discussed like maybe he just wasn't available, but I also kind of feel like it wasn't necessary.
Yeah, what would he have done?
Right. I guess he could have been at the very end, like picking them up, but still.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's jump on over to subscribers and comments. So our two latest subscribers are Jason Todman and Joseph Contreras. So thanks for subscribing, guys. And we have a couple comments. Two from Jason Todman. One is from our Lorelei Signal podcast. He says, I always thought the red thing thrown at Spock was just supposed to be a fruit he was meant to eat, and it was thrown so roughly and unintentionally as the woman wasn't as yet used to her revitalized strength. But that's just my opinion. First formed when I was a naive teenager in 1973, and I just saw no reason to change it ever since.
So I thought it was a fruit when I first saw it in my 30s. So
yeah. Yeah, I like the idea of she was throwing something at him and didn't realize her
strength, yeah.
And that it hurt him so much because he was getting so weak.
Yeah, so
that's actually decent idea.
Yeah, that's a cool take. I like that. Yeah. And honestly, that makes way more sense than just having Spock be like super
freak out for no reason.
He acted like he was Superman and that Ruby was kryptonite. I mean, that's
that's true. That's true.
That's how he crumpled up into a ball,
Yeah. And then he also commented on our More Tribbles, More Troubles episode. And he said, I always assumed that the reason the Klingons' weapons kept missing was because the cargo ships had newer, extra strong deflectors on them that, deflected the phaser fire. After all, they were carrying valuable cargo. Never really gave it much thought. So, just an interesting.
I can see that.
I would like that explanation a lot more than lazy animation.
Yeah, but it's always lazy animation. And it's not even that it's lazy. It's like from the small amount of like that I've dipped my toe into like animation,
Yeah.
you really appreciate shots that you can just copy paste, copy paste, copy paste.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
it's like, hey, I want this ship to shoot at this ship of like 40 times. You're like, great. So I'm drawing 6 explosions and just cycling them 40
Right.
times.
Right. Yeah, that's the other thing that always gets me too. Is if I can do it here with the webcam. It always this is the other thing I like that they do in the animated series is it'll be like they'll cut to somebody talking and then they'll cut back and they're like, yes, that's really interesting. It's like his whole like it's zoomed into like this part of his face, so you only see like this much.
Well, yeah, unless you have to draw less background.
Unless you have to draw, right? Exactly.
Because who wants to draw this in every background? So like you also notice there's shots too, like not in this episode, but in previous episodes of the animated series where they're like, oh, all hands to the bridge, and they show that like that top down drawing of like here's the bridge and here's everybody at their stations working, not moving their hands or anything because
no,
and then they'll just kind of shake the camera a little bit like, oh, we got hit,
they're rocked.
Why would you? I'm not drawing that.
That's true.
Listen, buddy, DC Fontana wants this done today. I'm not
walk
drawing...
out the door.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
oh, baby. Oh, baby. That'll always be funny.
It never will not be funny.
Oh, baby.
Yeah, and then the last comment we're going to discuss we got from Geek Filter Net, and they say Elan of Troyes, which is an episode that we didn't watch, is the first time we see the symbol of the Klingons.
Oh.
And in most cases is actually what we would think as sideways, but is the orientation seen in the original series. So it's like this way, but it's after the animated series, the logo is never shown that way again.
Wow.
And then he goes on to talk about how for Star Trek Adventures, like the animated series, like supplement, this like thing that they're researching, they wrote in universe the reason for the pink tribbles. It says tribbles have a default pigmentation that is modified by various genes to give them a color range similar to Terran dogs or cats. These genes were not present in the altered tribbles, leaving them with their default color pink. So basically, Cyrano is a bad geneticist. So, interesting theory.
Cyrano is a bad anything you want to say after. Yeah. Bad character, he's a bad smuggler, he's a bad shyster.
He's bad everything. Okay, so before we get into our review, stick around because there's going to be another remark from another Via Non Capta guest.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get into the review. I thought that the shuttle design of Copernicus was pretty cool.
It was pretty cool. Yeah, see that first shot where they're like flying through and he's like, First Officer Spock, we're on our way to this thing in the Copernicus. And I was like, what? I literally only remembered like the Galileo 1 and Galileo 2.
Yeah.
I don't remember the Copernicus from nothing.
No.
But it's a cooler design.
Yeah, it's a different design, yeah. And
it's more sleek.
I want to say this is like probably the only time
first and last.
Yeah.
Star Trek's really good at that.
Oh yeah.
First and last.
They're like, hey, check this out. And you're like, wow.
Hey, isn't this cool? Like
the stasis box was a pretty interesting idea.
It's a very weird concept, yeah. It's like Schrodinger's cat. Right.
It was like time has no effect on it.
And I was almost wondering, I was like, so where, like while this was playing out, I was like, so where does the whole Schrodinger's thing come from? Like, is that something that came from Star Trek? Is that like an actual scientific method from like the early 60s?
I think even earlier, I think
Yeah.
it's like 1930s or 40s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just scientific mumbo jumbo, right? It's sounding smarter than you really are because you know what the real Schrodinger's cat is? You know what? It's as simple as saying, it's 50-50.
Yeah. Oh,
That's
yeah.
it. That's all it is.
True.
It either is or it isn't.
Well, the reality is too is it's like you're saying, like it just simply like if somebody put a cat in a box and I had no context of what the cat was,
Yeah.
right, and they handed me the box, you would have to be like, shake and then listen. And if it didn't move after doing that, you'd be like,
Yeah.
well,
Sleeping.
I can pretty much assume that it's dead. It's and of course it's like it's still like, and that's why it still applies, is like you can only be 99.99% sure that the cat is dead, right? And that's the point of the box.
Yeah. There's a lot of things that you could use to rule in favor of one or the other.
Right.
It is a funny thing. It's a funny thing.
Well, the funny thing is too, is the stasis box, he talks about like a gravity belt, which helps you have control of gravity.
Yeah, so they discovered all that in stasis boxes.
And then he talks about how it was some sort of like basically a grenade, like a disruptor weapon, and it's like, but the pin was pulled, so they opened it, and then it was just like, oh,
yeah, that's a pretty fascinating thing.
So
so the gravitational thing is something that they implemented in all of Starfleet ships.
Yes.
So anytime in Star Trek you see ships that have like gravitation.
Well, yeah, I mean the episode of Star Trek Enterprise where Travis finds the sweet spot in the ship is like,
so that came from stasis
flavor technology. Yeah.
Yeah, so the part where Archer's in the shower and the grav system goes offline. Yeah, stasis box.
It's weird, but it's an interesting presentation of thoughts.
How funny is it too that a stasis box can only find a stasis box?
Yeah.
And so Sulu's like, so how did someone find the first stasis box?
Yeah.
It's like, well, Sulu, same way people find most things, by accident. Obviously.
We already kind of talked about it, but yeah, really interesting. No Kirk, no Enterprise.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. And I liked that the life support belts were back.
Yeah, I like seeing the life support belts again. That's cool. It makes total sense. I like how Uhura is not a fan of ice planets.
No, no.
Which is actually really funny because I'm thinking back to like even like Strange New Worlds where they go on these ice planets and she's not a fan.
Now here's the crazy thought. Could it be that they saw this episode, and then wrote to it, and the reason why she says she doesn't like ice planets is because Hemmer died on an ice planet?
On an ice planet? No. No. Maybe. I honestly think like for the Strange New Worlds guys to do research, they're literally like, all right, and we need to watch every episode. And it's like, all right, so you watch everything Kirk does, you watch everything Spock does, you watch everything Uhura does. And the guy writing Uhura was like, he's taking notes, right? And all he writes is like, likes to sing, doesn't like ice planets. She's the comms officer. That's it. I'm like, all right, get this to the writers as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Because that's basically all we get in
you don't get
the
much
original series from Uhura,
I think even
those are like the three main things that they kind of like write to.
I think even the shuttle accident that they bring up in the series is like made up.
No, that's all made up, yeah.
I thought the terminology of police web was interesting.
It's weird, right?
I was like, I get it, but it was like,
yeah, I got it. It's
like Spider-Man is law enforcement, right? He's like, this is my police web.
That web is highly electrified. You won't be able to leave off of it without getting electrified. I guess we don't even really know how it works, to be honest.
So one of the main reasons I had us watch this was Sulu says in this part before the commercial, he says that they had 4 wars with the Kazinti, and the last one was 200 years ago.
100 years ago, yeah. Which is...
So,
yeah.
If we follow the track of the original series, of the original series, and basically each season is a new year. So, like Turnabout Intruder being the last episode was in like 2269.
Yeah.
So, they don't really say it, but you can maybe guess that this is 2270.
Yeah.
And so, therefore, it's obviously saying 200 years ago is a generalization. But you can say it's 2070, which is 7 years after first contact.
Right.
So it's kind of interesting to think that in the 7 years that they discover warp technology and meet the Vulcans, that they have 4 wars with these Kazinti people and all these things. And it's kind of an interesting thought because in a way it kind of makes sense to have humanity slowly like reaching out to space and then coming across these meat eater kind of things, like these animal people.
Yeah.
So just an interesting thought. It does still end up working, just probably not the way they intended.
So it's like 150 years like before Archer's time period?
Yeah.
It's gotta be a ways.
It's like let's see, 51 minus, so it's like 81 years before Archer.
Yeah.
Before the first episode.
Right. So even his father would not have been alive for that.
No.
Time period.
Probably maybe his grandpa would have been like a kid.
Yeah. That's interesting. That's an interesting concept.
Yeah, so I don't know. I've always, for whatever reason, I don't know why. I think it's just because I like that gap between First Contact and Enterprise is unexplored, just like the end of Enterprise and the Cage is unexplored. They don't show anything. They show very little.
Yeah.
And so I've always been super fascinated in those 2 gaps because there's nothing there. And they talk about a lot of stuff.
Well, as we're seeing now, there was a whole Gorn war that happened.
Yep.
Before Kirk even knew what a Gorn was.
It's true. Right, exactly.
It's one of those things where that's what happens with every franchise when they're like,
like,
hey, we wrote all this stuff, and you're like, cool. And they're like, all right, so now we're going back to the beginning. Like, okay.
Yeah.
And like, hey, well, look at all this. And it's like, well, but that doesn't, why would that happen?
Nobody ever references that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's just what happens when movies and shows do well.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, hey, I have this great idea. Let's start off right with the action.
Oh yeah.
It's like Quiet Place, right?
Yeah.
Quiet Place, the movie starts off crazy. You're just hey, this is the world we live in. It's nuts. Cool. And then so then they're successful, and then they do a second movie, and now they're like, hey, so let's do a third movie, but let's do it the days leading up to the invasion.
Yeah,
why didn't you start with the invasion?
Right.
That would have been cool.
Yeah. The thing I thought you would appreciate, and so that's why I wrote it down, was that I figured you liked the fact that the aliens, the Kazinti, and the slavers shown in that picture were not simply just
humanoids
people in makeup.
Yeah. I did enjoy it. The slavers kind of look like a mix of the Gorn and Swamp Thing in a way, where they're they're pretty cool looking.
I thought you were going to say Wally Gator.
Yeah.
Ooh.
They also remind me of Argonians from Skyrim.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Lizard
Cyclops
people.
Argonian, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. It was a Cyclops, wasn't it? Yeah.
Pretty sure, yeah.
Yeah, I thought their design was cool. It's so funny. They're talking about like this box could hold just unlimited power.
Yeah.
And they open it and it's like, what is this?
Yeah.
What is this? And it's just like, oh my God, he's not wearing any clothes. What is this? A naked picture of a slaver? That's crazy.
Well, I'll keep it for them.
Oh, I'll just put this in the captain's quarters, please.
Yeah.
The thing that made me bust out laughing last night was this old, like shriveled, he's the telepath. He's like this all-knowing,
Yes.
ruffled old, haggard.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, what do you think? And he's like, I don't think anything. I don't know. Like he has this like super high pitched voice. I think it's the same voice as the one that we always say, the obey me. Obey me.
I think James doing voices like all of the
yeah.
You have observed the aliens. Can you read their minds?
I can read Sulu with difficulty, just Captain. The other human is only a female. The third is a pacifistic herbivore. Surely you would not force me to delve such minds.
Oh my God, it was so funny. Like, what do you think? He's like, he makes me think about eating vegetables and I don't like it.
I have it written down, so.
So they open the box and they're like, hey, look at this. And they just keep pulling things out of this box. I was like, wow, there's lots of stuff in this box.
He's like, a weapon, a pitcher, some meat. It's just like, oh, okay.
Yeah, the meat was interesting.
Yeah.
And they did an analysis on it, and then they came back and they're like, Captain, we did an analysis on the meat. It's very poisonous. Oh, okay. Yeah, kind of going back to like what you're talking about, like how they used to war with Earth.
Mm-hmm.
That one Kazindi guy, the captain guy, he's like, some of us have never tasted human.
Oh, yeah.
Like our ancestors have.
Yeah.
So that's what we always talk about, like in Star Trek, how it just is like, you really don't see like battles and stuff.
No, not overly, no.
So now you're picturing these giant like cat aliens just like shooting people and just like eating them. I mean, that's pretty.
That's pretty rough.
That's pretty rough, yeah.
And then also like like a select. It didn't seem like all of them. It seemed like only a handful of them were telepathic, and then it would be like these would read your mind.
Yeah, that's pretty dangerous. Yeah,
and then find they'd read humans' minds and then find where like they'd find battle plans or whatever. They would figure things out.
Yeah, that's pretty rough.
Them. Yeah, to eat them.
Yeah, that's pretty rough. I like how Spock's like, oh well, I'm an inferior being to them.
Oh God!
And you're like, what? And he's like, yeah, because I eat vegetables and I'm a vegetarian, and they really can't stand the idea of that. And Uhura, she's a woman, so
yeah. It was like there was a moment there where I started to be like, no. But then he continued to explain it, and I was like, okay, because he was just like, he's like, so they're going to talk to you because you're the most superior. And then he talks a little bit more, and you're like, why is Sulu more superior? And then he's like, because they view me as a weakling because I eat plant leaves and plants and stuff. And then he's like, and then he doesn't really explain why Uhura's inferior. He just keeps on talking, and then he's like, well, Uhura, he says female Kzinti are dumb animals, so therefore they're not going to.
Yeah, they just assume
that you're also stupid. And then she's like, well, that's like, she gets mad, and he's like, I'm not saying stupid.
Yeah.
The lean, bedraggled one is a reader of minds.
I've heard all Kzinti telepaths are unhappy neurotics. He fits the description.
There is no sure way to guard our thoughts from him. Mr. Sulu, he's not likely to deal with me or Lieutenant Uhura. She and I are inferior beings to them. But the Kzinti are meat eaters. If you sense him reading your mind, think of eating a raw vegetable.
Yes, sir. Maybe I can goad them into revealing their purpose.
Lieutenant Uhura, this may be crucial. In the presence of the Kzinti, do not say anything. Do not do anything startling. Try to look harmless.
Any special reason?
Are you forgetting Kzinti females are dumb animals? In an emergency, the Kzinti may forget a human female is an intelligent creature.
Thanks. Thanks a lot.
Lieutenant, I value your intelligence, but we may be able to seize an opportunity to escape if the Kzinti believe you have none.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's not me. It's these cat people. And then she proceeds to run away and get shot 7 times.
Yeah.
So kind of proves that she is a little stupid.
She almost gets away. Yeah.
Oh, 4 times she almost gets away. And he's like, hey, remember this time to zigzag. And what does she do? Run immediately just straight and get shot in the back. Oh.
All right, this is the halfway point, so go down to the comment section and write slaver meat.
That's poisonous.
It's poisonous.
Good thing we didn't eat it. And it like pans over and there's like 2 of them dead.
Oh. So before we get to the quote that I wrote it down and I kind of badly want it on a t-shirt. So before we get to that, I like the fact that the telepath's eyes get really big after he's told he may have to read a Vulcan and or a woman's mind.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's like comically huge.
Yeah. But the line that he says, and this is, I almost want his sad little face on a shirt. And underneath it, he says, he makes me taste yellow root munched between flat teeth.
Yellow root. I mean, obviously, like the root thing is just, him being
like a plant.
Stupid,
right?
But yeah. That's really funny.
Going back to what we were talking about earlier, the thing that made me be like, well, what is when the chuffed captain says, he's like, idiot, human females are intelligent too.
Yeah.
Like, now he mentions that they're intelligent, like after several moments. Like he makes all these remarks like, well, you might have to read her mind and all this stuff. And I don't know, it's just all these things. And then suddenly he's like,
it's like,
yeah.
I assume he didn't even put that together until she like ran away. And then he was like, oh, she has intelligence.
Maybe.
Only an intelligent being would try to escape. Wow.
Idiots love to stay and be
a pretty low bar.
Yeah. The thing that I thought was kind of weird, and maybe you did too, was if the slaver weapon has a setting that absorbs energy.
Yeah.
Why do their
just stay on it?
It's like, why do their
their belts
like still work?
Well, because that would kill them.
Well, I guess. Yes.
I thought that too.
Yeah.
Well, it's this whole thing too where they're like, hey, so they took Uhura and they're like, well, I don't know, we got to get her back, Spock. And it's like, why don't you just put the gun back into the energy absorber so the ship doesn't work,
True.
But, so it only worked to like turn the power off in the cave and the police web.
Yeah.
And that was it.
Nothing.
That's good. That's really handy. Oh, this must be the plot device setting.
Oh.
Like, Sulu 2 was just like, oh, this is a spy's weapon.
Yeah.
And you're like, what? Well, yeah. Doesn't have any phases. It's all about, the ability to disrupt things. Then he was like, hey, what's this setting? Blam! Blam! Blows up like the whole planet, half of the planet. He's like, well, I guess it's not a spy weapon. Dude.
Yeah, I like the fact that he surmised that it probably was a spy's weapon, just from like
Yeah.
Spock was also like, well, how do you know that? Like
Yeah.
that's a jump.
That's a leap.
And then then Sulu explained it. He's like, well, it's most of the settings on the weapon wouldn't keep slaves in line. It's like they're really random things. It seemed like a weapon that could be used for multi purposes.
Yeah.
But before that happens, that sweet drop kick from Spock,
Oh yeah.
the ultimate insult.
Crushed 2 ribs, he said.
Yeah. He's like, not only did I herbaceous like whatever, like did I kick him and hurt him, who I'm not supposed to because I'm a pacifist, but I also left him alive.
The greatest insult, I left him alive.
He
was bested by a vegetarian. I was like, wow. Wow. Well, it was really fun. I'm glad they explained that because, like, after he kicks him, he just kind of like lays there and stares at him.
Yeah.
I was like, okay. Like, and the guy goes over, he's like, what happened? He's like, I would rather not talk about it.
Let's just keep moving.
And then like it just kept getting worse. Buck's like, yeah, so now he'll have to like fight for his dominance, and they'll probably rip him apart. Like all the crew will probably just like kill him because he's such a weak, pathetic. It's like, wow.
Yeah.
Now he'll want to battle to the death in an arena to get back his honor. And that, Sulu, is when we take the weapon and run. It's like, my God.
Spock surmised quite a bit in a small amount of time. Yeah. If I just kick him and hurt him a little bit, he's done.
Spock explains all that, and then Sulu's like, well, what about Uhura? They kidnapped Uhura. And he's like, that I did not account for. I thought she was smarter. It's very interesting that the weapon completely changes. Like every time they switch the setting, even to the point where like the handle changes. So like the handle would change in your hand, like mid transformation.
Yeah, like every time they would do something, the weapon would look completely different. Yeah.
Well, you know what's funny too is like they're like, well, it doesn't, back to like Sulu saying it's a spy weapon because like, well, it doesn't have like a destructive laser, and they went through all the settings. And like, oh yeah. And then they get it, and they like now they're going through like even more different settings on the gun. Like, okay, yeah. They just like kept finding new settings
in between this one and between that.
Weird, yeah. Even when they get it back, they're like, "What's this setting?" I was like, "Dude, there's like 4 switches on there,
Yeah. Let's do trivia.
Oh, not again. All right, now you're overacting.
So David Gerrold, who wrote the to 2 Triples episodes, remembered how noted science fiction author Larry Nevin came to write this episode. He says, by then, story editor Dorothy Fontana knew Larry Nevin, and so when it was time to do the animated Star Trek, she was a big fan of Larry's and said, gee, I'd love to get a Larry Nevin story. Could we adapt one of your stories, Larry? And that's when the deal was made. Dorothy herself said, I thought bringing Larry Nevin in was a good move, again, to have that connection to the science fiction community. He was the one person who had an almost perfect story for us. The story in question was The Soft Weapon, a science fiction non-Star Trek short story that was notably republished in Nevin's collection of stories, Neutron Star, in 1968, having been published in 1967, and set in his known space universe. So there's the connection with DC Fontana trying to get him on the show. But then it says, following DC Fontana's invite to write for the animated Star Trek, Larry Nevin proposed 2 plot ideas that went undeveloped, as both had content that was deemed to be too problematic for the series. Shortly thereafter, Larry and Dorothy were spending part of an afternoon at Gene Roddenberry's residence when Gene suggested that Nevin rewrite the soft weapon as an episode. Dorothy reflected, "We told Larry, just write it, but put in our characters. You can put in the Kazin and all that." In retrospect, Larry remarked of the adaptation idea. That worked. However, he was initially not entirely sold on the prospect of including in the episode the Kazinti, who feature in the original short story as well as elsewhere in the known space universe. "I thought hard before giving the Kazinti to the Star Trek universe," Larry acknowledged. "I did it because I thought it would be fun to see what others would do with them."
But then he didn't give them the rights to them.
Like later, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
He says some changes were evidently made between the soft weapon and this adaptation. The characters in the original story are Jason Papandreou, which was changed to Lieutenant Sulu for the episode, Jason's wife, Anne Marie, which was changed to Uhura, and Pearson's puppeteer, Nessus, a manic depressive member of a race of pacifistic herbivores, changed to Spock. The device was originally made by a species called the Nukpian, rebelling against the Thrinton, which are the slavers, the Thrinton Empire. Although the Chuffed Captain and the Kazinti telepath are the only crew members from the Trader's Claw who receive a name or designation here, the original short story names the other members of the vessels as Flyer, who later carries telepath, and Slaver Student, who opens the box. And then lastly, he says he didn't have to include all the series' main characters in the episode. For instance, he noted, "I was given permission to leave Kirk out."
That's interesting that like that storyline is like pretty much 100% the same story. He just put 3 cast members in it.
Yeah. And then the last trivia thing I have was Bob Klein incidentally started to create storyboards before the design of the newly conceived long-range shuttlecraft Copernicus was finalized. As a stopgap measure, he used Matt Jeffries' Leif Erikson design in his storyboards as placeholders for the yet-to-be-conceived Copernicus. And then here is that storyboard from Matt Jeffries.
Oh, wonderful. Wow, the shuttle looks different.
Yeah.
Oh, there's the stasis box right there.
Yep, there it is. With Zulu and Spock, yeah.
Oh, see this box? That's the stasis box. Beta Ray is one of the rare spectacles of the galaxy.
Almost every ship.
That's
the thing in the beginning, yeah. Good stuff.
It is cool. I like this storyboard pictures.
So that was trivia. So we come back, and you kind of already touched on it, but they then shoot the slaver weapon, and it's basically a nuclear blast. And I thought to myself, I said, "Oh, a handheld Fat Man."
I also like to. I also was like, "Well, we can't let them have this." Like, oh yeah.
I did like though that like they shoot it, and then it goes off, and they're all like, "Whoa!" And then they like react to the shockwave of it coming and like hitting them and stuff.
Yeah, that was cool. And it like blew them away. I thought that was pretty funny.
Oh yeah.
Like upside down.
Yeah. The other thing that I thought was, I don't know, it was like the thing we talked about in The Savage Curtain, where Kirk says to Abraham Lincoln, like, "That's taped music," and it's like nobody in this day and age really listens to taped music anymore, like commonly.
Yeah.
So it's just like, their future idea type of thing. And it was the same thing. Spock says he's like, he was so surprised that a small handheld computer was like so hard to fathom. He's like, a reasoning computer at that size?
Oh, I know.
I don't know. It's just funny to me because it's like our phones are
Smaller
than the weapon. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, it was like, what is this setting? I've never seen this setting. Hello, I am weapon. Like, what? And they're like, we want to have control of the nuclear laser beam. And it's like, okay. And then everyone's all worried about it. And Spock's like, oh, I wouldn't worry about it too much. I'm sure. Like, he just knew, like, oh, no, that it's just going to blow everybody up. Like, okay.
Yeah, I literally wrote down their interaction because I really liked their like dialogue between each other.
We can't let them have that weapon.
They are not about to get it, Lieutenant.
Why not?
Assume you are a slaver war computer. You've been turned off. You do not know for how long. But when you were turned off, there was a war on. Now you are awakened by aliens you never saw before. They do not know any of the military passwords. They ask you so many questions, it is obvious they know little about you. Your owner is nowhere about. What would you think?
I'd think I'd been captured by the enemy. Or an enemy at least.
And when they ask you how to find your most powerful weapon setting, what would you give them?
Self-destruct. I like how Spock became Indiana Jones.
Oh.
Well, no, Sulu became Indiana Jones.
Okay.
Sulu's like, I would have looked great in the museum.
Oh.
And Spock's like, I don't think that would have made it to the museum.
Yeah. Too powerful.
I like when they all blow up.
Okay.
It was a pretty abrupt ending, too. They're just like, all right, well, our work here is done.
Just keep on trucking.
Do you think Spock went back in the ship and got the picture of like the slaver and the other thing that was in the box?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
As long as it wasn't destroyed in that explosion, because part of the ship gets eaten up. But yeah.
Yeah, I like how half the ship explodes, but they're just like the part that they're in, they're fine.
Yeah. They're not worried about the whatever. And he's just like, okay, life support belts on. They're like, okay, no problem.
Yeah, very slow and rational.
Yeah.
You know, that was the last form that the weapon took with like the two like V things.
Yeah. Yes, that was cool.
I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, the slaver, like that thing, that shot where
like right down the barrel,
the gun down the barrel. That's like in our intro. Yeah,
pretty cool.
Yeah. Okay, let's have a listen to our Via Non Capta guest, Jahan. I know him as my cousin, but you all know him as Lieutenant Jahan.
I know him as a giant piece of
cheeseburgers. Thank you so much for having me on the 51st episode.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
Everyone's going to watch 50th, and then they're going to wait for another 50. So you're like, well, we can put John on this one.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
No problem. We're starting the new 50.
Ah, yes. Okay. As for that episode, it starts off with a mysterious box, which you can't really go wrong there. They talk about it for approximately half of the episode.
Yeah.
They don't know what's in it. I'm not sure. I don't think they have the capabilities to open it on there.
It didn't seem like it, no.
No. But that was also pretty unclear. And Spock knew exactly what it was and what it did, and probably the contents, but he really didn't tell anybody until he was directly asked about it. It's just this powerful, mysterious box sitting open on a table while they're, careening through space. It's probably safe. Fine.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Well, the cat guys, remember the cat guys had to use like that beam to shoot it before they opened it.
Yeah, it's probably, they get rid of all the radiation and everything.
Yeah, that's fine.
Totally fine.
he remarks that like the other boxes had like an anti-gravity belt and then a pulled pin like
Yeah.
disruptor bomb or grenade or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, so they're essentially like blind boxes.
Right.
It's
Right.
just like, oh, here you get, you get your token, you go to the shop, you buy the thing, and hope you get a powerful weapon out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
It
this
reminded.
one
Sometimes
It
you get
reminds-
spoiled meat in a
Right.
picture, but what are you gonna do?
Oh well.
It reminds me of the episode of Family Guy where they win that contest, and Peter and Lois, they're like, "Hey, so you can take the boat or you can take the mystery box." And he's like, "Well, the mystery box." And she's like, "What do you mean? We want a boat? We're just going to take the boat." And he's like, "Yeah, but the mystery box could be anything. It could even be a boat."
I wasn't entirely clear about why those boxes were even
No.
a thing. It doesn't. At no point does it explain any of that. All right,
And
just-
it never
has
really
nothing
got.
to do with Star Trek. It's not even a Star Trek thing, apparently. So.
Oh man.
the Federation decided it was best if they keep everything.
Yeah.
They always do.
Yeah, we better go grab that one. That this box says it's the only way we can find it is with a box. Even Sulu was like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
And how did you find that first one? It's like, oh, we didn't mean to. But then we decided they were all ours. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And obviously, it was a trap.
Oh.
Sprung by the Kikathians.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have a question immediately about them.
Yes.
So they're obviously
No.
wearing suits, these cats.
Yes.
It covers their tail.
Yeah.
Like it is a skin tight pink spandex
Oh
suit.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay. And then it almost seemed like oh, you're on our planet. You're taking stuff that belongs to us, but then it almost made too much sense. So they had to be like, but also we want to conquer the world with what's in here. Like, oh, there it is. Now we have right to absolutely destroy you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's the thing too. Like, it's like not their home planet, and they're like, "Hey, so you stole this from us?" It's like, no, you aren't on anybody's planet, and you lured us here. So, like, what are you talking about?
But also, how did they know
I don't know.
that they were even going to have a box? Because I mean, they're pretty rare according to
Right.
Because their box was glowing too. And they're like, "Hey, there's another box."
Passing ships in space, and they're like, "Wait a minute, whoa!"
Yeah. So the absolute probability of that, right? Like two incredibly rare boxes happen to be near each other, and they're like, "Wait a minute, we can take advantage of this."
And didn't they at one point say that they opened one and it was empty?
The cat people had a box.
Yeah.
That's why they got lured there, but their
They
box
said
I
it was
think was
empty.
empty.
So it's like there's enough knowledge and information about these boxes out there where people know there's just like world-ending weapons in them, but
Yeah.
but also they're so few and far between that you never really see them. It was I mean, it's
a weird concept, yeah.
Yeah. But I guess that's not the point. It was pretty much my favorite when they opened it. They're like, wait a minute. It's a picture of an alligator.
I thought that was all that was in there when I first was watching.
It's just like a time capsule.
It's just this green lizard guy laying on a bed like, oh. Like,
Or it's like, it's perfectly preserved meat. Like, no, it's not. It's terrible poison rancid meat. Why? They didn't even explain why it's in there.
No. This is what we looked like. This is what our meat is like.
This is what we taste like. Yeah.
Oh, and
If
here's
it was
this
a slaver. Why did they leave the weapon in the box with the meat in the picture?
Well,
Why wouldn't they keep it for themselves?
No.
Who did this?
They're showing it to the galaxy.
Pretty wild.
Yeah, it's pretty weird.
It's the slaver's weapon that they apparently didn't need anymore. But
Right,
like,
and
here's a
never-
headshot and some meat. Like, please.
Right.
Please.
Well,
But,
and the whole slaver thing was like they were around like 2 billion years ago, like even before like humanity was in existence.
that makes it even stranger.
Yes.
Yeah, it's very weird.
They decided that weapon was like, oh well, this is a weapon for a spy. Clearly,
yeah.
It just also has a nuclear beam that comes out of it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, in true spy fashion.
Yeah. They didn't, a different box is like a wristwatch that has dental floss in it.
This one has pottery in it. This one has a nuclear weapon. That's the luck of the draw.
Yeah. This one has a nice picture of our father.
Yeah. This was our dad. This was his favorite cut of steak, and this is his nuclear weapon.
These are just time capsules that innocent things.
Just boils down to the slavers were just weird. They were just a weird faction of people. They're like, we made these cool stasis boxes that I don't know. Time has no effect on them. Let's just put anything we want in them and send them out into space.
Yeah, I mean, I would probably put meat in it and just see what happens later. Like, I wonder how this is going to look later. There's no way it's going to be okay.
And here's a picture of me.
Here's the person that did this thing. Yeah.
Here's me putting the meat in the box.
But as usual, our Trek crew saved the day with sexism and racism.
Yeah, they did.
Used it against their enemies, which is the trademark move.
That is the trademark move.
The thing that did you think, because the thing that made me laugh like super hard was like, they're like, oh, this is the old grizzled cat guy. He's the telepath. He can read minds, and he's like an experienced war vet. And then they're like, hey, so what about this? And he's like, I don't know what. I don't want to read his mind. And they're like this awful voice.
He's seen some things. He's used 8 of his lives, and he's just barely hanging on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's painful for him to read memories of vegetarians. Apparently. They're like, he could have valuable information. Well, he's thinking about celery, so I'd rather not.
Yeah, the thing I had quoted that made me laugh was he says, he makes me taste yellow root munched between flat teeth.
That's so stupid.
They just, I mean, it's like any kind of place where it's, because clearly those cat people didn't communicate with each other, because one of them seems to know all about humans. The other one seems to know absolutely nothing, but they're not going to, like in this dire situation where they think they're going to get this crazy weapon that's going to help them get ultimate power and revenge or whatever. And they're just like, we're like, we don't have to talk to those two. Well, that one's a woman and that one eats celery. So we don't need.
They're clearly incompetent.
Yeah, we don't talk to them.
I like that too. The whole time they're like, oh, vegetarians are stupid and women are stupid. And then like Uhura runs away and they're like, she has intelligence. Get her. Get her.
The sudden realization.
Yeah.
But they did determine that there needed to be a self-destruct button on this nuclear weapon.
Yes.
They also got captured a lot throughout the episode.
Yeah, they sure did. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're like, ugh.
The really funny thing is like they get captured the first time because of just being ambushed. Like they didn't know what was going to happen, and then they get captured again because they don't realize that these people have already violated the treaty from 200 years ago. So then they get shot, and you're like, okay. But the one that made me laugh the most was the fact that the nuclear bomb goes off, and it's like, oh, and then the shockwave knocks them out, and then they wake up and they're just all captured. Like, oh, whatever. Like, oh, okay. Didn't they leave in a spaceship? Didn't they like take off?
Yeah.
They were up in orbit, saw the explosion, and were like, whoa, and then came back.
We saw it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, they kept saying, we know it has the capability. We saw it. It's like, okay.
It also has a flashlight.
Yeah.
Was there any reason that it was just the 3 of them on that ship?
Yes.
Good.
Less
Good
to draw.
Yeah, I mean, the first 10 minutes of that episode was just cutting back of pictures of like barely moving their mouths to the picture of that box.
Yes.
Yeah.
Then it just starts glowing. They're like, "Is that a problem?"
Nope.
No, it's fine.
I don't see why it would be.
That's weird. Like it could have just exploded.
Spock's not worried. He knows it all. He knows everything about it.
Yeah, I did appreciate all the characters, though. They all were.
Yeah.
Like, not that I'm up to date on my Star Trek, but I
Yeah,
feel like they're all pretty true to form.
Yeah, it's honestly really nice that all the original cast except for one came back to do all of their parts and stuff. So
Who's the one that didn't?
Chekhov. They didn't.
Worst.
It wasn't him. They just didn't call him back. It was too much money.
Was he busy or something?
Yeah.
No, they said it was a cost thing. Like he was just too. And I was just like, but he's a part of the main cast. Like I don't. Whatever.
Wanted too much money.
Yeah. They're like, it's okay. You'll direct an episode. It'll be fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think my favorite definitely was the end. When obviously those idiot cats didn't know what they were doing and self-destructed themselves. Like there's absolutely no way they lived through any of that.
No.
And then as they're leaving, Uhura's like, well, they better start learning their lessons. I'm surprised there wasn't laughter as the ship through.
Superstition thing, is that what you mean? Yeah.
Yeah, the superstition thing.
Yeah.
Oh man. So not much superstition about it. They just blew themselves.
I don't know if there were any alive on the ship, but yeah.
Oof.
Yeah.
Just
I don't know.
Very sudden, brutal ending.
Yeah.
Okay, let's leave now.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a really weird episode. I wanted to watch it because one, it kind of introduces like an interesting idea that like these cat people 200 years ago like fought wars with like early humanity and like ate people and like they were terrible and then they have this treaty of Sirius and it's like they can't have weapons unless you're a police force. And then it's like, but they're violating that by having weapons. It's just like it's such a weird thing to make like canon in Star Trek. And you're like,
yeah, there's a lot going on.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. It's just like a really funny thing that they introduced like a lot of interesting ideas, especially like the stasis box. Like in theory, in any of the shows, they could have introduced another stasis box and had something in it and been interesting. But they're like, nope, never again do they ever talk about these people.
Well, the other funny thing too, like you said, is like they didn't even get the rights to like the cat people.
Oh, yeah.
So then they just went on to make like different types of cat people.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have the budget for Chekhov, but we got the budget for these insane cat people. And
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, I've hoped that I've helped to brainwash Caleb into liking Star Trek even more than he already does.
Yeah,
that's what the point. That's what this is, right?
Yeah,
it's just an elaborate experiment to
force.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's the only reason I came on here. I very much enjoyed my experience watching Slaver's Weapon.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
So Caleb, of your we'll ask him this final question of your trophy thing. What would you want to ask him?
What's the cheesiest thing in this episode? That's a good one.
Okay.
Wow.
So it's called the Porthos Award.
Oh. I'm on board. Okay.
Because Porthos used to like to eat cheese.
Yeah, you shouldn't. Don't give him cheese.
I'll give it to him, but he wants it real bad.
Oh, that's what he lives for.
He loves it.
Wow, the cheesiest thing in the episode. Oof. The whole episode is kind of a big cheese. Really.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, just the incompetence of those cat people. They've been just holding on to vengeance for 200 years and not learning anything.
No.
And they're like a fraction group from like the actual like society, because like they stole that ship, so they basically are like defectors from their planet.
Right.
So yeah, they're
so they're like
crazies, which makes sense.
They're just losers.
Yeah, it would have been really funny to just cut to. They should have just ended with them like taking him back to the planet, like whoever survived that blast, and we're just like, yeah, so
Here
this
you
thing happened, and then they're gonna be like, eat them all.
God,
you are sentenced to cannibalism.
Exactly.
Death by munching.
I guess I'm giving portal sword to all those cats, all of them.
Good,
like it.
That's great. Yeah,
I don't know how cheesy they are, but they're terrible.
They're pretty cheesy.
Well, thanks for jumping on, getting the live take.
Yeah, would have done the whole thing.
Pre-recorded. Yeah. Well,
I would have. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we didn't want you to. So.
What do we tell them? We already did it.
We already did it. Yeah. All set. Yo, don't worry about it. It's all. Yeah.
Yeah.
I appreciate you having me.
Yeah. So now we can go back to the show. All right, Caleb. Well, now that we know what John thought of the episode, let's do the thing everybody's been waiting for.
Caleb.
So, Caleb, who gets the Erica Artegas Award for being the most unlikable?
The Slavers. Hate them. I don't know anything about them, but I don't like them.
I don't like him. That picture of him, egregious.
Yeah. That's some clothes on.
Well, then who gets the Elizabeth Cutler Award for being the most forgettable?
The two Kazindi that analyzed the meat. They literally like, there's literally like so much other stuff going on, and they like kind of come over that ridge and like, Captain, we analyzed it.
Oh.
It's poisonous. Don't eat it. All right, carry on testing the weapon. It's like, okay, thank you.
What gets the Mugatu Award for being the best alien of the episode?
The Kazindi are cool to see.
Yeah, I think they're fascinating. They have like little thin ears and
little whiskers,
like saber-toothed tigers, and yeah.
And then they have like a really weird gait, like their backs are hunched and they're
also dressed kind of like 1940s, but like
Hanna-Barbera.
Like Buck Rogers like outfits.
Like the gloves and the big fishbowl helmets.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Who gets the Trip Tucker Award for being the MVP?
I'll give it to Spock this week.
All right. Yeah. I like it. He had a lot of information on the stasis box.
Yeah.
Yeah. He understood that the weapon was going to like just kill all the Kazinti, and also
he kicked out his ribs. Yeah.
Well, that might be tipping the hat a little bit, but what gets the Shran Award for the best action sequence?
Yeah, let's give it to Spock's drop kick.
I wasn't sure if you were going to pick that or the nuclear explosion happening.
Nah.
That like side angle.
That was pretty good.
2 ribs. What gets the NX Award for some sweet ship stuff?
I'll give it to the weapon.
Oh, okay. The slaver weapon.
Yeah.
Wow. Cool.
I think that's a pretty cool piece of technology.
Cool.
Because the police web is stupid, and and their ship is dumb.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was going to be the life support belts again or the Copernicus like shuttle. I wasn't sure which one you were.
I do like those. It honestly it's a tie between like the actual slaver weapon and the stasis box is a cool concept.
What gets the Porthos Award for being the cheesiest thing of the episode?
The telepath's voice.
Okay.
Yeah. That was the cheesiest thing. When he started talking, I just lost it. Oh, he makes me think about vegetables. Like, grow a set, man.
I hate it. I hate it.
Also, we didn't talk about it, but like, aren't they like technically like on the like wanted criminals essentially by like their government?
No, not at all. No.
Because they were like, hey, so this ship is stolen and all this stuff is stolen, but if we bring back the box, like we'll be redeemed, but if not, like we'll be like in prison for the rest of it.
Yeah. Yeah, because they also violated the Treaty of Sirius.
Yeah.
Phasers, yeah.
Yeah, right. I like that one.
Outside of
like,
police.
well, obviously they've ignored that treaty because they currently have phases.
It's an interesting thought that like basically at the end of, because I think Sirius is the star.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It basically means that when the humans won the final war, they wrote up this treaty and were like, you're not allowed to arm yourself except for like police vehicles.
Wow.
You're like, that's what must have happened during the war for the Kzinti to like agree to such a,
I don't know. Considering the fact that like phasers are not like their strongest weapon, it's
right.
The ability for them to like read your mind and then like find where you're hiding and then eat you. I mean, that I would worry about that more than weapons. I would ban like eating humans. I would ban that.
Can't.
The phaser thing. So that being said, that means that like only like Starfleet can have weapons because they're like a government agency.
I don't know.
Right. Or is the treaty just like they can't have phasers?
Just imposed upon them, it sounds like.
So because you started this war, you can no longer have weapons, but like we and everybody else in the Klingons, we can all have weapons. So you can't arm yourself. You can't arm yourself for anything.
Nothing.
So like Klingons come down and they're like, well, it's too bad we signed that treaty.
Well, they can have police weapons.
So they can have like police vehicles and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they just like, it just pans out to space and they have like 80 like warships and like,
right.
Hey, just policing the planet, buddy. Just policing the planet.
Just policing. Yeah, just policing.
You wouldn't believe the crime.
And lastly, what gets the Enterprise Award for being the best scene of the episode?
His Indy blowing up.
Ooh, the crater.
The crater. That was my favorite. I like seeing his Indy chunks all over the ship.
God. All right, everybody, it's your turn to go down to the comment section and write what you thought of the episode. Did you like it? Did you hate it? Did you want to see more of it? Are you sad that the Kzinti aren't in that many other episodes? Let us know down below. Next week's episode will not be a normal Retrek review.
Yay.
Despite this not being the season 1 finale, we are stopping here for season 1.
Yay.
And next week's episode will be what Caleb thought of the entire season 1, the few episodes that we watched. But when we come back from doing that, we will pick up in season 2 of Star Trek the Animated Series with the episode BEM.
Hey.
So that was the Retrek review. So as always, you can like the video if you liked it, dislike it if you disliked it, share it with all your friends and family and Trek enthusiasts, subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and ring that bell for notifications so that you catch any video that comes up on the channel, like the podcast here, history, maybe an RPG, anything like that. And before you leave the video, make sure you go over to Caleb's channel and see what he has in store for you.
Nothing.
It's a prop building channel. He does a lot of fun, cool, awesome things. So if you like anything, go over there. Caleb, do you have anything to tell them what they may see on your channel here shortly?
I made some of the original signs from the Nostromo ship. Some screenshots I took from the first Alien movie, kind of like direction signs showing you like where stuff is.
Yeah,
but they're kind of cool. They fit in the basement. And they look pretty sweet. So
nice.
That was a fun, quick build. But next thing coming up is it's the anniversary of Ghostbusters and Gremlins. So maybe you can look forward to some kind of wacky multiverse thing.
Big fan of Ghostbusters and Gremlins, so if you enjoy that stuff, he's shown me some screenshots of it. I highly recommend you wait for that video. Check it out. It's really fun and cool. You'll enjoy it if you like either of those franchises. So we once again thank John for joining. We thank you guys for watching. We had a live stream last week, so you can go on the channel and go back and watch us put together a model of the USS Enterprise. Partially together. It'll be a slow kind of build when we have live streams, but we, talk and just kind of put it together. So you can go check that out on the channel.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, it was good. And so, computer, you know what to do. End program. See you guys.
Bye.